Hi, and welcome to Authentically ADHD with me, your host, Carmen Irace. I am a teacher, a life coach, a lifelong learner, and an ADHDer. I created this podcast to create community, to create a place for us to learn together as the newest research comes out about this complex neurodevelopmental disorder. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi friend, how are you? Welcome back to the podcast. I am feeling the chilly weather of January in Chicagoland, and I'm learning to not mind the cold so much because I used to absolutely just hate it. I used to literally get upset and argue with the weather. It shouldn't be this way. Why is it so cold? Why did they create wind that hurts, your face? And my coach would call this arguing with reality, which is absolutely true. Fighting with and being upset with things that are out of your control is basically arguing with reality. It's the opposite of today's topic, which is part 2 of self-concept. And I named the episode Radical because we're talking about ADHD, anxiety, and radical acceptance today. Last week, we talked about the thoughts and feelings you have about yourself, the collection of them, and your self-concept. So, I thought, and then realized a really great follow-up would be accepting reality for what it is, essentially radical acceptance. So let's get started. So how does radical acceptance go into, your whole identity? So because I absolutely love definitions, I made sure that I found a good one, and here it is. Radical acceptance is a daily, mindful choice to be in the present moment, have awareness in your experience without arguing with reality. So acceptance of any kind is an active thing. It does not mean you just agree with the hard parts of your life or distract yourself from them or ignore them or avoid them. It means that daily you choose to believe that reality cannot be argued with and that you are not broken. You do not need fixing, and you can find a way to manage your emotions, to live a more fulfilling life. Radical acceptance sometimes is used by people, and they think that once they get the hang of it, quote unquote, that they'll just be happy. But it's to make sure I really point this out and make it clear. I want to highlight that we are all still human. So practicing radical acceptance can provide more peace and more happiness into your life, but no strategy, skill, practice, or meditation will cure us from being human and having ADHD or having anxiety or feeling human emotions. It just makes managing them a lot easier. So if you're viewing it as fixing yourself, it won't work. Ask me how I know. I've tried. I'm also connecting self-concept and radical acceptance because they overlap quite a bit. Radical acceptance is actually part of developing your full identity. So radical acceptance, when viewed through the self-concept lens, is knowing that things will happen outside of you no matter how much thought work, self-improvement, and or arguing with reality you do. It's still reality, and it's still going to happen. So, why are we talking about radical acceptance as part of self-acceptance and identity? Simply put, the two are just intertwined. Accepting your whole self involves accepting your strengths, your quote-unquote flaws, and the way that you react to the world around you. This is especially important for us people with ADHD tendencies, and anxiety, because our self-worth in a world that expects neurotypical behavior can sometimes leave us growing up confused, in shame spirals, feeling inadequate, and if it's not addressed, it can turn into worsening mental health issues, self-deprecation, self-harm, and even suicide. Hi friend, would you do me a really quick favor and scroll up to the top of your podcast app and rate and review the show for me? I would really appreciate it. If not, at least maybe share it with a friend or somebody you think could benefit from it. That way I can make sure I'm helping as many people as humanly possible. Thank you for listening, rating, and reviewing to the show. Here's an example of how self-concept and radical acceptance are interrelated. A person who has ADHD tendencies, or anxiety may have trouble with planning, organization, and thinking rationally. While growing up, this person is told things like, try harder, you're being dramatic, why are you so unorganized, and so on. When this person hears these things enough times, these thoughts become their own thoughts, which create emotions, and they are then adopted into that person's identity or self-concept. So when the reality of a situation is happening, for example, a messy house, when this person is grown, this person may have developed a sense of, a thought that being messy is bad, and that's in their identity, that's in their self-concept. So the thought of being messy is bad, therefore they are, as a person, they are bad. So when we experience shame for long periods of time, and I learned this from Brené Brown, we automatically think that the situation that caused us to think and feel shame, it makes us put that as part of our self-concept. So instead of thinking I made a mistake, we think I am bad. So even just approaching these ideas in a different way can change things. Because the brain it's so powerful, and the plasticity of our brains, they're not used as much as I feel we should use them. We can literally change our identity, create it. We can change our brains, we can change our behaviors, and we can train our thoughts. And in order to accept our whole authentic selves, we need to untangle our symptoms of our brain-based syndromes and challenges from our sense of self. Just because you have anxiety doesn't mean you automatically are always an anxious person. That's a character belief that you have that makes up part of your identity. Just because I often am unorganized does not mean that I am just a messy, careless person. So, how did we develop these negative identities and self-concepts in the first place? We learn growing up through media, adults in our lives, teachers, parents, families, and peers. The messages we received through life developed our current self-concept. So I believe all human adults should revisit their self-concept as an identity as an adult, because The one that we developed through childhood may not accurately reflect how you want to live your life right now. During childhood, there were most likely times that you were masking symptoms or negative outcomes to look more typical. Not only if you have ADHD, anxiety, or the tendencies of it, everybody has quirks. But you may have adopted unhealthy internal behaviors such as perfectionism, negative internal thought loops, and or beating yourself up and berating yourself for being a failure or failing at something. So, especially with ADHD, anxiety, and the tendencies towards these disorders, you may have grown up unaware of RSD, how to nourish your brain and practice healthy self-care. But how could you if no one ever taught you? Awareness is the first step. Seriously, awareness is the first step. I want to make it clear that these changes, this is not something that you can just do or develop overnight. It's not easy, but it's so worth it. To finally truly understand that feeling broken didn't mean I was a broken person was freeing. To actually finally truly believe that when I fail, it does not mean I am a failure as a person, brought me an abundance of peace. To know what real self-care looks like is empowering. Instead of fighting who I was, I dug in and I learned why I am the way I am, and I invite you to do the same. Learn about you. Do you find yourself resisting accepting you fully the way you are? Do you find yourself arguing with reality a lot? I mentioned earlier that acceptance is an action that is ongoing. Usually, when people think of the word acceptance, it's not a one-word meaning, and it's treated as a one-and-done activity when it's not. And acceptance is also not indifference. It's not an excuse. It's not resignation or a passive action. It's an ongoing willingness to live your life in reality while truly managing your thoughts and emotions, knowing who you are and what you value while reality happens around you. So, what are some ways that we can start to do this? 1. Delve into your own self-concept and learn about you. 2. Develop healthy self-care routines for your mental health. 3. Foster a healthy inner self. Basically, start using positive self-talk. Number 4. Push perfectionism far away from you. 5. Identify and recognize your triggers. 6. Identify rejection sensitivity. 7. Allow yourself to safely demask and feel your feelings regularly. 8. Learn how to accurately nourish your brain and body. 9. Understand and recognize that your symptoms, automatic behaviors, and what you want to change and not is not necessarily a part of your full identity. Number 10, 10, believe you are worthy, valuable, and phenomenal because you were born. You are put on this earth for a reason. So, I feel like I jumped around quite a bit on this episode, but I have ADHD, so it is what it is. How about a recap, though, just to, wrap it up. Self-acceptance and radical acceptance are intertwined. We develop a sense or a self-concept through messages we receive throughout childhood. Radical acceptance is something all humans struggle with. Accepting your full self is part of developing your self-concept. Acceptance is not an excuse, a passive action, or resignation. Acceptance is not fighting with reality. Radical acceptance is a willingness to live life knowing who you are, what you value, and a daily choice to believe the new and healthy thoughts and emotions about yourself. I'm not going to lie to you, friend. It takes a while, but to be generally more peaceful, confident, and free in your own life it's just totally worth it. That's all I have for now. Stay authentic, friends. Hey listener, if you're looking for a little bit more in setting and reaching your goals or any other part of my podcast, you have two options below. You can join Focused and we both get a credit to our account, or you can sign up for a free 30-minute coaching call with me in the second link. Do either one if you feel like you want more support in these areas. Thanks. Talk to you soon.